A dear friend of mine and one of the most powerful men in sports, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, Rob Manfred. Happy New Year to you. I know it's late, but I very much appreciate you coming down and giving us some time today.
Well, glad to do it. Always happy to see you.
Yeah, that's Chris McMonigle, diehard Yankee fan.
That's right.
We were just
talking about it. I was trying to give him tips for helping making sure we get another championship.
All right, it's funny, just to start off with the Yankees, something that Chris and I talked about yesterday. He's upset that there's not more action post-World Series, obviously spring training and whatnot. And I didn't realize that, I guess the last time you guys negotiated the CBA, you tried to put a deadline in, which I suggested to Chris yesterday as a way to have some action and excitement for the free agency period. Kind of walk me through that.
Well, we're going to be good. I'm with Chris on this one.
We need to pick it up.
The proposal really was not about trying to alter the terms of deals one direction or another. I'm kind of a believer in you have a deadline. You're going to make the same deal, give or take,
right.
If you string it out. I think the reason I was interested in, I think that like from the 1st of December to the 20th, if we had a period in there when all that free agency activity went on, it's a great marketing opportunity for the game at a point in the calendar when, you're not quite in the NFL playoffs, the NBA's still kind of early, and, it's a great chance to kind of own some off-season weeks, right, which is crucial to selling season tickets. So that's why I was interested.
Do you look, I'm going to ask you a question. I know it's hard for you to answer because how can you possibly put yourself in the brains of the players and the union reps?
Yeah.
But was there a legitimate reason from them why they were opposed to it?
Yeah, I mean, what they said back, I can only tell you what they said.
Yeah.
I don't know what was in their heads, but what they said back was they thought that kind of deadline would work to the disadvantage of the players. And, I don't put much credence in this. Let's face it, on both sides of these negotiations, there's really sophisticated people who negotiate for a living all the time. You tell them whatever the hell the rules are, it's all going to turn out the same, no matter what they're,
right.
It's the money's the money is the money. So, but that's what they said. But I do think it is something that would help the game in terms of maintaining interest during the offseason.
Yeah, no, coming off that World Series, to have the winter meetings be lifeless is disappointing as a fan.
I agree.
I can tell you. So is that something that you could see being re-brought up? I've heard things as much like, maybe a trade deadline, other kind of deadline set around that baseball winter meeting.
Yeah, I think there's going to be
continue.
I think there's going to be some more conversation about it because I do believe that there's a marketing opportunity. And, let's face it, we operate in a really competitive environment. Just put entertainment generally to one side. Just sports, right? Mm-hmm. It's really competitive. And I think that you make a mistake, particularly during the off season, when you don't take every advantage to push your sport out in front of your fans during that down period.
You're coming off one of the greatest postseasons in recent memory, and specifically one of the great World Series in recent memory. And we're trying to figure out, how do you capitalize off that? But also brought to mind the fact that there's a lot of people in a lot of cities that love baseball that are now uber concerned that because of the Dodgers' financial capabilities and, frankly, the fact that they arguably have the best general manager in baseball and a very smart front office, so they make very shrewd baseball moves, that there's the danger of them becoming, a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, consecutive World Series type of franchise, which I know it might not be possible the way the sport's played, and they were damn near close to losing the World Series this past year. I think sports needs villains. I think having a team or two in either league that are dominant is good overall for the sport because it's okay to root against somebody also, right? Are you concerned, though, in the manner in which the Dodgers have done some of these deals with all this deferred money and their ability to just restock every single year?
Yeah, look, let me say this. I admire what the Dodger organization has done on both sides of the house. I mean, they've done a phenomenal job on the revenue side, and they've made great baseball decisions. Right. And, you know, getting those two together is harder than you think. And everything they've done completely within the rules, and a large market like the Dodgers does drive your business. I mean, there's no, you know, whether you say large market, villain, whatever,
sure.
A team that's winning a lot can drive the market. I think the advantage baseball has is a very random sport. And, you know, the chances of stringing that many together, I think, are fairly limited. But I do get concerned. You know, we try to listen to our fans, and we do hear from fans in a lot of markets that, you know, gee whiz, when we look at the resources they have compared to the resources that are available in our market, we don't feel like it's quite a fair shake. And that's an issue we're going to have to deal with.
So what keeps you asleep more at night? The prospect of the Dodgers being a super team, or the reality that there's still some franchises that are unwilling to get into the game and spend the type of money that it seems like you have to spend to be just competitive?
Yeah, I want to quibble with one word. Unwilling.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I think unable is really a better word. But having said that, I worry more about the latter. And I worry more about the latter because I think when you have a 162-game season, you have to think all the time and listen to your fans when they're saying, we don't feel like we have a chance to compete.
Right.
Because when people feel like they don't have a chance to compete, they check out on you.
Yeah, I mean, and you say unwilling, and we argue unwilling, and I get it, but like the Pittsburgh Pirates just signed their first multi-year contract in years. It's hard to tell a fan base, I'll be honest with you, it's hard to tell a fan base that the Pittsburgh Pirates are incapable of competing at a higher level at that. Is there any way we can start incentivizing some of these teams to spend more?
Yeah, look, I think that the question of incentivization is a really important one. You know, I think probably three other sports have dealt with it by having a rule. You got to spend, you know, everybody talks about the cap piece. The cap piece comes with another piece that, you know, where you have to spend. And I think, you know, mandating a certain level of commitment in terms of spending in the right kind of economic system can be a good thing.
No.
That brings us to the obvious question, the one I'm sure you've been asked about a million times. People that cover the sport seem like it's a fait accompli. We get one more year of baseball, and then we're all in trouble, right? There's going to be a stoppage, whatever you want to call it, a strike, a lockout, blah, blah, blah.
Whatever.
Right, whatever. It doesn't matter what you call it. The end result is the same. Where are you right now, and you know the folks that make up your think tank and your trusted advisors with baseball and the relationship you have with the union representatives? Do you think that is a reality? And do you think you guys can get to the table enough times to maybe work something out, or even, you know, push back, you know, extend the CBA while negotiating? What do you think about that?
Look, I do think there has been a rush to negativity by a lot of the media that covers.
Well, the last
sport.
one was pretty ugly. Last one was, and it went pretty long. And,
but that was Max Scherzer's fault. He ain't going to be around for the next one.
And there was multiple times where we thought we were missing games. So I mean,
look, here's the thing. You know, I came inside at baseball in 1998. We have always played through 5 or 6 rounds of bargaining. We have always played 162 games. Okay, all I can tell you is that when I came, my goal was to make sure that every time we bargained, we played 162, and that's my goal this time around. We haven't even started the process. And, you know, candid conversation about, you know, we see things that, you know, need to be addressed. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make this proposal or that proposal. I think we have to wait and see how things unfold at the table. We got lots and lots of time to work on it. And the most important thing for fans is certainly my goal to make sure that we played 162 games next year.
Talking to Rob Manfred, Commissioner of Major League Baseball, I know one of the things for a fact that keeps all the commissioners awake at night are the potential for a gambling scandal and the integrity of the game being called into question.
Right.
You guys have dealt with it a few times already this past year, where a couple guys have been suspended. Obviously, the Ohtani story played itself out about a year ago now with his interpreter. How concerned are you about gambling getting to a place where it's uncontrollable and you have guys making the types of decisions that some of your players have been accused of making? Now, they get their day in court, obviously, but how concerned are you about gambling and having a gambling scandal?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, integrity is number one on every commissioner's concern list. And when you have problems, and we have had some issues, it heightens that concern. I do think that there are things that can be done, and I kind of feel like we saw this one coming. There's certain types of bets that are really problematic. I mean, when you have a bet that's in the control of one player and the event that they're betting on really has no relation to the ultimate outcome of the game.
Like, are you going to throw a ball or a strike on your third pitch?
That's what they're dealing with right now. First pitch of the game at bat, first pitch of an inning.
So I think that, we had no legal betting. We got a lot of legal betting now. I think that there probably should be a little swing back regulation.
Let me stop you and ask you a question. Do you, and I just don't know the answer, and obviously I'm a responsible gaming ambassador for FanDuel. I spoke to every NBA rookie at the symposium this year and have offered the same, as you know, to all the leagues just from my life experience. Can you guys dictate to the legal books, hey, listen, appreciate the partnership. It's made the game more popular. I can make that argument. I think that's a fact to say that. Can you dictate to the leagues or to the gambling companies, we no longer want you to offer in-game wagering or those types of wagers you're talking about?
Yeah, we actually have worked with all the sports books to limit the prop bets, no parlays involved with them, only small dollar amounts to limit the prospect for
the exposure.
Exposure. And, we try to work with them as partners to get to the right spot. As you can imagine, in-game is a very broad category where a lot of money gets wagered, and it does relate to the engagement issues. But what I started to say is I do think you're going to see kind of a move back, and people are going to be a little more rational about what bets ought to be offered. I also think the other place you're going to, just in terms of how pervasive, and we've tried to be careful about that, pervasive in terms of getting into the middle of broadcasts and whatnot. Yeah.
So there's a level of concern. That's fair to say.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, off of that, because with gambling, there's also bad calls. Right. And so you've had a referee issue, an umpire issue for a while, and this year they're going to be implementing the replay with the
balls and strikes.
Mm-hmm. Where are we with that? Are we looking at how far along the line before we get just full automatic? Where are we with just calling the replay? Where do we see the replay system going for balls and strikes?
Well, look, I think that this year it's going to be a challenge system.
2 challenges a game.
2 challenges.
But the challenge is only pitcher, batter, catcher.
Right. But if you're right, you keep them. We tested it full every pitch. It works. I think that the challenge system is the right first step. And I also think it's consistent with our approach to replay. I think our game is such that you're never going to get everything perfect on the field. That's an unattainable goal. What you want to do is have a system in place that allows the players an opportunity to correct the high leverage miss. And I think that the challenge system is that kind of system.
It's funny. I saw a poll. I'm not sure if it was a poll you guys did, just an internal poll or not, but it was a polling of players and fans, people that have bought a ticket to a game this past year on the ABS system. And it seemed overwhelmingly that the fans do not want full-time automated balls and strike calls. They like the challenge system, and they still want there to be an umpire calling balls and strikes.
Yeah, that is the fan polling, and it may be more important in my own thinking. Tons and tons of Major League players have played with both systems in the minor leagues. Mm-hmm. The players overwhelmingly preferred the challenge system. I do think it's a pretty good rule of thumb when you're doing something on the field and you get that kind of an overwhelming response from players, that you ought to give a little credence to it. That they've experienced it, they know what they're talking about. And look, they have some legitimate concerns. If you go to ABS, every pitch. It will change the game, and this is one of the hard things about making changes in baseball in ways that people don't think about. So, for example, if ABS is calling every pitch, the framing catcher, the guy who's not that great offensive player, but he's great behind the plate. He gets a lot of calls.
A lot of value in it right now.
That guy
goes away.
Becomes he's done. That guy's job goes away, and then you got to think the next step. Who goes back there? He probably a more offensive-minded player, and that's got a series of ramifications associated with it. Now, more offensive, that might be a good thing, but I'm just saying, when you make a change like that, you got to think all the way through these unforeseen examples.
Let me go back to the union for 1 second. Just a thought appeared in my mind. If the union is telling you steadfastly, we will never agree to a cap, but you guys collectively think a cap's the only way for success, future success financially for the sport, you still sit down and talk about it, right? At a negotiation. Does it become a deal breaker? Like we can't get a CBA done if there's no movement on that?
That's a Tony Clark question. It really is. I have never, and really, until I got elected commissioner, all I did was labor relations. That's how I made my living. I've never been in a negotiation where before the first piece of paper went across the table, I or anyone I represented was out there saying, this we absolutely will not talk about. I just think it's a hard way to begin a negotiation.
I think you guys have done a good job for the sport, something that I think baseball struggled with for a long time, even predating you, where baseball was always really good at honoring its past, its legacy, the great players of the past, and not great making current great players household names and making them so they can't walk down Fifth Avenue without being noticed. And it seems like this past year, that turned dramatically in a good way.
This has been a multi-year effort and focus for us. And, sometimes you get lucky. Things come together in a way.
Well, you had a guy named the Big Dumper. Who doesn't love that?
And you know what? You make my first point. We are lucky. We have an unbelievably appealing, talented group of players in the game right now. Just great personalities, great players, have accomplished unbelievable things very, very early in their career, number one. Number two, this generation of players is a little different. They are much more social media savvy, much more attuned to the idea that they're a brand and that brand has value to them and that they work with us and at the idea of promoting themselves. And we have tried to develop programs that make it easy. We have a huge social media program that makes it really easy for players to post highlights and comment on them because we think that drives fandom and it gives our fans something that our research tells us really important, the ability to see the player beyond what they see on the field. So
talking to Rob Manfred, Commissioner of Major League Baseball, World Baseball Classic this year. Yankee fans are now thrilled that Aaron Judge is participating in it because of Edwin Diaz a couple of years ago getting hurt.
That's the concern of it, right? That's still the concern. The time of year, I suppose, I don't know if there's a better time to do it right before the season. Gives guys as much time possible to recover from injury, but that's the concern of it. It does bring a lot of excitement, but the baseball fans' concern is we saw devastating injuries to players, and we know baseball, unfortunately, especially pitchers, ramping up their workload early to go take on these very competitive games. And to the credit of the tournament, it feels like it's ramping up in its competition. USA's really brought a lot of players to the team this year. I think that would be the concern, that these young pitchers especially ramping up their arms, getting ready to play playoff type atmosphere games.
Well, I would say this. There is nothing stronger than the notion of nationalism and sport when you're trying to grow something internationally. The WBC, one of the biggest events in Japan, a big part of the growth that we've seen and so when you're trying to grow the game and try to grow the game internationally, it's really, really hard to ignore the power of nationalism and sport, the combination, number one. Number two, you got to remember, these are professional athletes. There are limitations in the WBC rules that are designed to protect players. While I can't say we've had no injuries, our injury record in the WBC actually pretty darn good. You know, I mean, the Diaz thing, obviously very unfortunate, got a lot of attention because
it was during a celebration.
Yeah, it wasn't even during the game.
No, I mean, that I think everyone understands it's a fluke. But he's in a position to put himself in a fluke injury, but it is a fluke injury.
And you know, I think that as the event has matured, there's a lot more kind of direct control by the clubs in terms of what's happening, particularly with pitching. You know, there's conversation back and forth. For example, with the U.S. team between Mark DeRosa and who's ever responsible for pitching on the team where the pitcher's coming from, making sure that what we're doing with them in the WBC is consonant with their plan for getting the pitcher ready. So we're trying to take every precaution, but the more positive note, and really,
I think it's great. I love it.
This is going to be one of the best baseball tournaments ever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to really.
And by the way,
something.
I was saying to him earlier today, the fan reaction. Because, Latin American fans, and music and drums and dancing, and I'm jealous of it. Because it's like every one of these games is an event. Yeah. And you feel like I'm missing out because I'm not at the event. You know what I mean?
The atmosphere in the ballpark in Miami, the last WBC.
It's awesome.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and no one ever goes to watch baseball games down there. It's a thrill to see that stadium.
We just saw that. Here's a different one. We just saw the NBA, or they've begun this in-season
tournament. The
Emirates Cup. Has there ever been a consideration of doing some sort of in-season baseball tournament with the 162?
We talk about all of those kinds of talk about them as format changes. We've talked about split seasons. We've talked about in-season in tournaments. We do understand that 162 is a long pull. I think the difficulty, to accomplish those sort of in-season events, you almost inevitably start talking about fewer regular season games. And, that is it is a much more complicated thing in our sport than it is in other sports.
Because of the records.
All of our season-long records,
changes.
You're playing around with something that people care a lot about.
No, I know. And most fans differ. For me, if you say they need to change the games, I go 163. I mean, that's me. I'm the kind of baseball fan that says that. But there definitely is. And I want to ask you about realignment, right? We got possible expansion and realignment coming up. Where are we with the expansion idea? And then with realignment, can Yankee fan and Met fans, and this would be great for us, can we envision a time where Yankees and Mets are in the same division? What does that mean for American League, National League? We just talked about the tradition of baseball. Like, how dramatic of this expansion and realignment could change the game?
Yeah, so let's start with, first of all, I would like to expand. I think 32 would be good for us. And, fundamentally, there's a lot of cities like to have Major League Baseball. When people want your product, you ought to try to, find a way to sell it to them. It's kind of basic, number one. Number two, it does a ton of for us from a format perspective. You would realign. You would do it along geographic lines, which could alleviate a ton of the travel burden that's on players. Remember, we ask our players 162 times in 186 days. So most of the play between 162 and 186 travel, right? I mean, so you can eliminate a lot of that travel, make it less burdensome, which would be a great thing in terms of player health and safety. And if you play geographically, we get in a postseason, we have those 4 window days that I love, right? You get 4 baseball games in a day. It's awesome. But when you think about the fans in the individual markets, you always end up with, because of the way we're set up, you get Boston versus Anaheim in one of the early rounds. So you're either going to be too late for the fans in Boston or too early. So if you realign geographically, you would look more like other sports where you play up east into the World Series and west into the World Series. And that 10 o'clock game on the West Coast that sometimes is a problem for us becomes a primetime game on the West Coast for the two teams that are playing. So there's a lot of advantages to it. I think if you did it, you'd probably be 8-4s, right? Okay. And I think you would try to keep the 2 team cities separate.
You would. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So they would not be in the same division.
Yeah, that would be my thinking. Now,
Okay.
a lot of water got to go over that dam.
And by the way, he ain't going to be commissioner for 20 more years either. He's going to give this
You're
problem
right
to
about
somebody
that.
else. By the way, I know you announced a couple years ago, I think you said 5 more years, and that's a wrap for you.
Yeah.
The juices are still flowing, though.
Yeah.
You going to stick by that? And are you ready to?
Yeah, I'm done at the end. I'm done at the end of this contract. I've told them that, and I'm going to stick to it. I'll be 70 when I'm done.
So it's enough.
Yeah, it is enough.
Right.
You know,
the grandkids want to spend more time with you, right?
Yeah, you know, look, I also think, you know, you have a certain period of time when, you know, you have things that you want to accomplish. You take your best shot. You try to get as much done as possible. And then, you know, it's sort of time for the next guy with his set of things. And I think that's healthy and good for the sport and the business.
I saw that you're bringing back Field of Dreams game this year, which
excited
was
about
great.
that, yeah.
Yankees, of course, played it a few years back. But, and I'm asking a question I should know the answer. I apologize, I don't. 250th anniversary of the country, a lot of big events in D.C. Obviously, MMA, UFC is going to have an event at the White House. Do you guys have, as the original national pastime, events in celebration of the country?
We do. We actually kicked off today. You know, the umbrella for our activities is we're going to donate 250,000 volunteer hours associated with baseball events over the course of this year.
Wow.
The centerpiece for us in terms of celebration will be the All-Star Game in Philadelphia. That's why we're going to be in Philadelphia. But we have really elaborate marketing plan that involves every aspect of our business that will have a celebration component, celebration of the 250th anniversary of the country, and we're really excited about it. You know, we think that baseball has sort of a special place in American culture, and we're going all out on this one.
Yeah, that sounds like it. Final couple questions. We'll let you go. Appreciate your time. It dawned on me recently that baseball doesn't control its awards. Baseball Writers of America, they get to decide who's the Cy Young, who's the MVP. They own that. And I wonder if along your time as commissioner of Major League Baseball, if you've ever thought of trying to change that where baseball owns its own awards. It's very unique in that regard.
Yeah. We actually, the last 3 years, have done an event in Las Vegas, the All MLB Awards.
Right.
You know, it's grown every single year. I think, you know, we had a great picture at the end this year. It was like 100 and something players and former players on the stage at the end of the night. We have been working with the baseball writers. We'd love to have the awards that they own rolled into that celebration in Las Vegas. You know, the key to an event like that, kind of like everything you do in sports, is players. And we think, you know, we can put on a multi-day event in Las Vegas that would attract all the players that win awards. And again, apropos of what we started on today in terms of the signing deadline, you know, takes place right after the World Series, kind of builds on that World Series
and
momentum.
televise it, make it a big deal.
It would be televised.
Yeah.
You know, the All MLB Awards are on our network.
Right.
You'd like it there or somewhere else, obviously. But like we had a great golf tournament.
Golf was great. Turner actually broadcasted it in delay, but they showed it afterwards.
Yeah,
and it seemed like the players enjoyed doing that too, because it's former players, current players, etc.
Yeah, and which is a nice kind of generational thing. You know, there's a lot to the notion of generational shift in our game. You know, it gets passed on in families by generation, and we like the idea of, you know, CC Sabathia being out there with a current player, or, you know, any Hall of Fame, George Brett with a current Royal. We think there's really something there, and combining that with all of the big awards we think would be really good.
I know the fans here don't care about it. You do. You know, the recent development with the regional sports networks, not in New York, obviously. Yes, it's very healthy. SNY, Tehran, very healthy. But some of the middle America markets, not that healthy. And I know there's a bankruptcy filing, et cetera. You're concerned for those other markets that fans want to be able to watch their favorite team locally. How do we save that for them?
Yeah, look, the best message for fans, put the money and all that. I can talk about that if you want, but the most important thing is that no matter what happens, Major League Baseball is in a position to put all of the games on locally and to make a digital streaming product available in market for those fans.
So they will not miss a game.
Never miss a game.
Got it.
I mean, remember, 2 years ago, there was a bankruptcy filing. San Diego, they pulled the plug on them. We put them up in one day. There was never a game missed.
Right.
So, we are prepared, even if all 9 end up without
the games will be televised some manner.
MLB will have them. They will be available on cable in the markets, and there will be a digital alternative.
Here's the toughest question I'm going to ask you. When you read the story yesterday, like I read and Big Mac read, that the Las Vegas Athletics got denied their trademark application for both Las Vegas Athletics and Vegas Athletics because somebody else got it first. Do you beat your, like, what do you do when you hear that?
I read it, and, I asked some questions afterwards. Of all the things that happened yesterday that I was kind of sweating bullets about, that one will get handled, okay? That one will get handled.
Someone's trying to check. And a final thing for you, and then Big Mac jump in, of course. Look, your tenure is going to come to an end sooner than later.
Yep.
Attendance is up. Ratings are up.
Yeah.
Sport is very healthy. The pitch clock might be the single most important change the sport has had in the last century. Baseball fans might argue with me on that, but it's changed the dynamic of the sport.
The overtime one, the extra inning one, people have a problem with.
Yeah, for sure, in a positive way.
Yeah.
It made the sport for a lot of people more watchable.
Right.
And I think the numbers belie that. Guys, when they leave positions at your level, do talk about around retirement, about legacy. And I wonder if you've contemplated that at all.
Yeah, I thought about it. Legacy's for dead guys.
Well, you're not dead.
I'm not ready to be dead yet. So,
good. All right. So, if you were going to write your own eulogy, like, what do you want people to, when they say Rob Manfred, what do you want the thought to be about what you meant to the game of baseball?
Yeah, I hope that people accept the fact that while there were changes that not everybody loved, you're never going to make it, that what we did and what we continue to do is we listened to our fans and we tried to make the game better for our fans. Every single day when I go to work, I try to take a minute at the beginning of the day and think, remember, it's about the fans. You can worry about the money, you really worry about all the issues that you got to deal with. At the end of the day, it's about the fans. If you get the fans right, you get momentum surrounding the sport, which we are enjoying right now, that you can't buy. You absolutely can't buy.
And speaking of momentum, because I do just want to ask you one last question about the idea of a cap. I feel like I have to. The momentum of the World Series, everything where the sport is, to go into it, we're all very fearful. You talked about the negativity before it's even started. And I think it's because you mentioned the players have this hard set rule that they've begun negotiation with. This isn't something we can address. We have the owner here at the Yankees talking about openly being up for voting positive for a salary cap. With the understanding of the hard battle that would be, I think that's where the fans really are concerned. Is this the CBA agreement, the war of the salary cap? Is that how we could look at it, or is that too narrow a minded view of the overall CBA? And is it that much of a dead issue that we feel like we're going to be going back and forth for no reason about?
Look, the way I think about it is this. We have a huge positive working force right now, and you alluded to it. When you have momentum like we have, that you've worked as hard as we have to get, that is a force that, puts people in a frame of mind that they should understand they need to make an agreement, okay? I don't think about despite that momentum, we have a couple of issues that we hear about from our fans all the time. Blackouts, and the perception that some teams are not competitive.
Right.
We got to address those issues. How we figure out a way to address those issues is the challenge of the bargaining process, and jumping to the idea that it's going to be salary cap, no salary cap is a premature thing to do. We got to maintain the momentum we all understand we have. I think we need to address those two issues, and I think we'll figure out a way to do it.
Well, look, I appreciate you coming on. Every show I've ever done, you've been gracious enough to come in person. I love you for that and appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to another great season of baseball, and can't thank you enough for spending some time with us today.
You know why I come in person, right?
Go ahead.
Okay, I come in person because I think one of the sort of grassroots, nobody knows about, most fun things we ever did was
here we
the
go.
Make-A-Wish softball games. No, and I'm not going to get into the I swear to God, I'm not going to, okay? I will not get into that.
You brought Jenny Finch into pitch.
But you got to admit, those were fun evenings.
It was great.
Win, lose, or draw. It was a nice community
I wish
thing.
we could do it again.
It was great for our employees. You get your gang together.
Done.
I'll get my ringers together, and we'll see how we do. Okay?
Hold on. So give me your word. If I put together a team, a celebrity team, you'll get an MLB team together. We'll do it for Make-A-Wish, 100%.
100.
And we'll do it this summer.
100.
Done?
We're in.
Now, let me just tell people they haven't heard the story yet. The first time we played this game, it was up in Westchester, okay? And we're looking at a bunch of like middle-aged guys from Major League Baseball, and Boom and I are like, oh, we got these guys. Because we played a lot of softball back then, okay? And we're all warming up, and this is going to be an easy win for us, okay? All of a sudden, a bus pulls up. The Dominican junior national team gets off the bus. We lost 35-1. Year 2. Jenny Finch is a starting pitcher. So, game on, Commish.
Let's go.
We'll pick a date that works
Just
in the summer.
In my defense, I told you then, I'll tell you, everybody on that bus got a W-2 for Major League Baseball.
That's Rob Manfred, everybody. We'll do that game up in Westchester again this summer. And, I appreciate you. And thanks for spending some minutes with us today.
Great to see you both. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Quick break. Back after this.